It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in early September 2019 when Rachel first called me to say we needed to talk. I didn't know it then, but that phone call would mark the beginning of a betrayal I would never see coming, one that would change my life forever. My name is Harold Benton, and I'm 72 years old. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in East Lansing, Michigan, a house that's been in the family for over 50 years. It's where I raised my daughter, Rachel, with my late wife, Marlene. It's where I spent my happiest days, watching Rachel grow, getting her first bike, celebrating her high school graduation. And then, of course, it's where I said goodbye to Marlene in 2016, after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. Marlene had been the light of my life. We weren't rich, but we made things work. We built a life that was simple, quiet, and filled with love. I never needed much more than that. But after Marlene passed, I realized just how alone I really was. Rachel, my only child, came by often after her mother's death, but the visits grew less frequent as time passed. At first, she'd come to help with the yard work, bring me lunch, or just sit with me and talk about her life. But slowly, those visits became less about me and more about her own life. Her new job in Detroit, her growing social circle, her marriage to a man I wasn't entirely sure about. I could sense that Rachel was pulling away. At first, I thought it was normal. She had a life to live, after all. But the truth was, the space between us was growing wider by the day. I tried to fill the void by keeping busy, mowing the lawn, cleaning out the garage, or taking long walks around the neighborhood. But no matter how much I stayed busy, there was an emptiness I couldn't escape. It was a cool evening in October 2018 when I first noticed something was off. Rachel called me up, asking if I could meet her and Declan for dinner at the Royal Fork, a small family restaurant in downtown Lansing we used to visit. I was glad to hear from her and didn't think twice when she said Declan would be there. You see, I had always liked Declan when he first came into Rachel's life. He seemed charming, confident, successful, and always so polite. They had been married for about 3 years at that point. But something about him always left me feeling uneasy, though I never said anything. Maybe it was his attitude or the way he would talk about money, like it was the only thing that mattered. Still, Rachel seemed happy, so I kept my concerns to myself. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Declan leaned in and began talking about real estate, about the housing market in Lansing, and about how he and Rachel were thinking about buying a new house. The conversation quickly shifted toward me, specifically my house. Harold, he said, you've been living here for so long. I was thinking, what if you sold this place and moved somewhere a little more manageable? Maybe somewhere warmer, like Florida or Arizona? Rachel nodded in agreement, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. It's really for your own good, Dad. You don't need all this space anymore, and you've got so much equity tied up in this place. You could use the money to live comfortably. I set my fork down, my stomach tightening. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected them to come at me so directly. I'm fine here, I said, my voice steady, though I could feel a knot forming in my chest. This house is my home. It's where Marlene and I built our life. It's where Rachel grew up. Declan, ever the smooth talker, quickly cut in. Of course, we know how much it means to you, Harold. But it doesn't make sense to keep a house this big when it's just you here. You could move into something smaller. Heck, we could help you find a nice place. There was something in the way he said it, too casual, too practiced. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I wanted. It was about something else, something I wasn't seeing clearly. Rachel, sensing the discomfort in my silence, reached over and squeezed my hand. Dad, please. We just want what's best for you. This is the right move. But the more they talked, the more I felt a creeping unease. I loved Rachel. I wanted to believe her. But there was something in her eyes that night, a quiet urgency that didn't sit right with me. It had been nearly a year since that dinner, and I hadn't given much thought to their suggestion of selling the house. But then in March 2019, Rachel brought it up again. This time, there was a sense of finality to it. She showed up at my house one Saturday morning. The sound of her car tires crunching on the gravel driveway echoing through the quiet street. She was alone, which felt strange, but I didn't think much of it. She had a way of making everything feel casual, like nothing was ever too urgent. "Dad," she said, setting down her purse, "I need you to sign something." I glanced at her, confused. "Sign what?" "It's just a few papers," she explained quickly. "We've been talking with some people about selling the house and finding something smaller for you, easier to manage. But we need you to sign off on a few things before we start the process." She handed me a thick envelope. It was all very official, real estate papers and something that looked like a deed. I didn't understand all the legal jargon. I wasn't exactly sharp when it came to that sort of thing. But I trusted Rachel. She was my daughter. She had always been so responsible. I didn't question her. Declan wasn't with her, but his presence was felt even in his absence. Rachel spoke for both of them. Her voice was steady, reassuring. "It's just a formality, Dad. I promise." But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. The feeling of unease that had first crept in that night at the Royal Fork was now back, with a vengeance. I signed the papers. It was a warm afternoon in June 2019 when Rachel made the call that would change everything. I had just finished mowing the lawn and was sitting on the porch, a glass of iced tea in my hand. The house had never felt as quiet as it did then. Empty, but filled with memories. The memories of Marlene, of Rachel's childhood. Every room held a piece of my life. I looked at the house we had built together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of it, the weight of all the years. When the phone rang, I didn't recognize the number, but I picked it up anyway. "Dad, it's Rachel." Her voice sounded different today, softer, almost as if she was walking on eggshells. "Hi, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "What's going on?" "I was thinking," she started, her words slow and measured. "I know you've been through a lot since Mom passed, and I don't want to rush you, but I really think it's time for you to think about selling the house." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Rachel, I've told you I'm not ready. This house is my home. It's where your mother and I built our lives. It's not just a building, it's everything." There was silence on the other end for a moment. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. I knew she was in Detroit, working from her apartment. "I know, Dad. But think about it," Rachel said, her voice softer now, more convincing. "The house is too much for you. You can't manage it by yourself anymore. I can't be there all the time, and it's too big for you now. We just want you to be comfortable." I looked around at the house, the living room where Marlene and I had spent evenings reading together, the kitchen where we had celebrated every birthday and holiday. This was where Rachel had grown up, where she had taken her first steps. How could I even consider selling it? How could I just let go of all the memories? But Rachel didn't stop. She continued, her words coming faster now. "We've talked to a few real estate agents, Dad. They said we could get a great price for it right now. The market's really good, and we can find something smaller, something that suits your needs better." I could hear Declan's voice in the background, faint but firm. "Harold, it's just practical. The house is too big for you now. You don't need all the space. It's just inefficient." His words cut through me. They weren't new. He had said the same thing the last time we talked about it. But now they felt more forceful, more certain. I could almost hear the undertone of business in his voice, as though the house was just another property to flip. another transaction. I had always trusted Rachel's judgment, but this didn't feel like her. This didn't sound like her. The Rachel I knew wouldn't have so easily agreed to this. She wouldn't have let Declan's practical talk overwrite the memories tied to this house. This house was more than just a piece of property. It was my past, my life. It was everything that mattered. I tried to voice my discomfort. Rachel, this is where we lived with your mother. This house isn't just about square footage and taxes. It's about everything we had here. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Rachel's voice came through, quieter now, more insistent. I know, Dad. I know. But think about it. You're getting older. The stairs are hard to climb. The yard is too much to keep up with. I'm just trying to look out for you. I want you to be comfortable, safe. Her words echoed in my mind, and I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. I wanted to be reasonable. I wanted to understand, to see things from her perspective. After all, she wasn't wrong. My knees ached more than they used to. The yard had become too much for me to handle. The house wasn't as easy to keep up with anymore. But could I really sell it? Could I walk away from this place, from the memories of Marlene, from everything I had worked for? I felt a lump rise in my throat. I don't know, Rachel. It's hard. I'm not ready to let it go. I know, Dad, she said, her voice soft again, soothing. But please think about it. Declan and I can help you through the process. We'll make sure it's an easy transition for you. You won't have to worry about a thing. I could hear Declan's voice again in the background, louder now, as if he was trying to convince me without saying anything directly. It's just a smart decision, Harold. No reason to hold on to a house that's too big for you. We'll help you find something nice, something that works better for your needs. You've got equity tied up in this place. You deserve to use it for yourself. And there it was, the words I had feared. Declan wasn't just talking about me being comfortable anymore. He was talking about what he wanted: equity, property, financial sense. But Rachel was still talking, her voice almost pleading now. Dad, please, I'm just trying to help. I want you to be happy, and I want you to be safe. This is the right thing to do. I sat there in silence for what felt like hours, listening to the distant hum of traffic, feeling the weight of her words pressed down on me. Okay, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. Okay, I'll think about it. The decision weighed heavily on me for the next few days. I couldn't shake the thought of leaving behind the house that had held our lives, our love, our history. Every corner of this place was filled with memories of Marlene. Our first Christmas together, our first family dinner, the quiet nights where we'd talk about everything and nothing at all. But Declan's words echoed in my head. Practical, efficient. You don't need this much space anymore. I wanted to believe Rachel. I wanted to trust her, but I couldn't escape the feeling that they weren't just asking me to sell the house for my well-being. They were asking me to give up something I couldn't replace. And that thought gnawed at me. I sat in the living room that night, staring at the empty chair where Marlene used to sit, imagining her soft voice beside me, telling me not to be so foolish. But I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to lose Rachel, not like this. I didn't want her to think I was being difficult or unreasonable. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I agreed. Now, I wanted to hear from you. What would you have done in Harold's place? Would you have agreed to sell your family home for the sake of convenience? Or would you have held on to the memories that made it special? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you found this story engaging, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional, real-life stories like this one. We're all about exploring the complexity of relationships, love, betrayal, and everything in between. You don't want to miss what happens next in Harold's journey. It was a Thursday afternoon in July 2019 when Rachel and Declan showed up at my door with a folder full of papers. I had just finished my lunch, sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee still steaming beside me. I wasn't expecting them, but I welcomed the visit. It had been a while since we had spent time together, and Rachel's visits were becoming increasingly rare. They were both smiling as they walked in, like they always did. Declan had that confident, almost smug grin on his face, the kind that always rubbed me the wrong way. But I didn't say anything. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed unusually upbeat, almost like she had something to prove. "Dad," Rachel said, setting down her purse on the chair. "I'm so glad we could finally catch up. We've got a few things to go over with you today, but it'll be quick, I promise." "Sure, sweetheart," I said, giving her a half-smile. "What's all this about?" Declan handed me the folder. "It's just some estate planning paperwork," he explained smoothly, his voice too polished, too rehearsed. "We've been talking about this for a while. It's for your own peace of mind. You don't have to worry about anything. We're just getting everything in order for you." I blinked at the folder, feeling a slight tightening in my chest. I'd heard of estate planning before, but it always sounded like something that was far off in the distance, something for much older people, people who had already seen their lives come to a close. I wasn't there yet, but Rachel and Declan were both sitting in front of me, looking so assured, so confident. They seemed to know what was best. "Estate planning?" I repeated, my voice a little shaky. "I don't think I need anything like that yet." Rachel placed a hand on mine, her touch warm but firm. "It's just make sure everything's in place, Dad. You've been through so much already, with Mom's passing. We don't want anything to be complicated later on. This is just to make things easier for you." Declan nodded along. "Exactly. It's all about setting you up for the future, making sure you're comfortable." I hesitated, looking at the folder. I felt the weight of it in my hands, the weight of a decision I hadn't even made yet. Something about this felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint why. I had always trusted Rachel. I had always trusted her judgment, even when it came to things I didn't fully understand. And Declan, despite the unease I felt around him, seemed to genuinely care for her. He wanted the best for her, didn't he? "Are you sure about this?" I asked, glancing at both of them. "I mean, why rush it? I'm fine with how things are right now." Declan gave a reassuring smile, that same smile that always made him look so polished, so in control. "It's not about rushing, Harold. It's about taking care of things while we're still ahead of the game. No one knows what tomorrow might bring. These things take time, and it's easier to do it now than wait until it's too late. Trust me." His voice was smooth, almost too smooth. I could tell Rachel was on the same page, nodding eagerly beside him, her eyes bright. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that everything they were doing was for my benefit. But there's something about this that made me feel like I was on the edge of something I couldn't control. Still, the pressure to go along with it was mounting. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was being needed. Maybe this was just the way things worked when you got older. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to start thinking about the future, about the things that came after. "Okay," I said, my voice low. "I'll sign, but I still don't really understand why all this is necessary." Rachel smiled at me, that sweet, reassuring smile of hers. "It's just a precaution, Dad. I know it feels strange, but you'll feel better knowing everything is sorted." I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on me. I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to be the obstacle to her happiness, to her peace of mind. After all, she was my daughter. I had raised her to be strong, independent. She was looking out for me now, and I should trust her. With a deep breath, I opened the folder. Inside were several documents, each filled with legal language I didn't fully understand. There was one document that stood out to me, a deed of some sort. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the word transfer. But Declan was quick to explain. It's just a formality, Harold. It's a power of attorney, so we can handle things for you if anything were to happen. We don't want you to have to deal with everything on your own. He pointed to the line at the bottom, where I was supposed to sign. This just gives us permission to make decisions for you if you're not able to. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the discomfort down. I trusted him. I wanted to believe it was all for the best. Rachel squeezed my hand again, looking at me with those pleading eyes. Dad, we're just making sure everything is in place. We love you and we want to help. I nodded slowly, my fingers trembling slightly as I took the pen. I signed the papers one after another, my heart heavy with uncertainty. But my love for Rachel, my desire to make her proud, kept me from questioning anything too deeply. The signatures came easily, though my gut told me something wasn't quite right. As I finished, I sat back in my chair, the weight of the folder now replaced by the weight of my own decision. Declan smiled at me, but it wasn't the warm smile I had once seen. It felt cold, calculated. Rachel's eyes were shining, but there was something behind them that I couldn't quite place. Was she happy for me, or was she happy for herself? Thanks, Dad, she said softly, standing up to give me a hug. This really means a lot. Declan patted me on the back, a little too hard. We'll take care of the rest, Harold. You don't need to worry about a thing. But as I watched them leave, something gnawed at me, a feeling that had been growing ever since they walked in. Something wasn't right. I had signed the papers without fully understanding what they meant. But the emotional weight of trusting Rachel, of wanting to believe in her, kept me from asking more questions. I wanted to believe this was for the best. I had trusted her with everything. But in that moment, as I looked at the empty chair where Marlene used to sit, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just signed away more than I was willing to lose. It was a typical Tuesday in August 2019 when Rachel first brought up the idea of the vacation. I had just finished my morning routine, coffee, a light breakfast, and the usual scroll for the local news, and sat down at the kitchen table, wondering if the day would bring anything different. Then she called me. Dad, Rachel said, her voice cheery and upbeat. I've been thinking. It's time for you to get away for a bit. A real break. Just you. You need it. I stopped what I was doing, feeling a bit confused. A break? I'm fine, Rachel. I don't need to go anywhere. Oh, but you do, she pressed, her tone still light. You've been working so hard to take care of everything. After Mom passed, you've been alone a lot. I just think you need a change of scenery. Maybe a week in the mountains or by the beach, somewhere peaceful. The idea was unexpected. I wasn't used to being the one who needed a change of scenery. But Rachel's voice was full of excitement, and I could tell she was genuinely happy about it. I didn't want to let her down, especially when she was so eager to do something nice for me. I don't know, sweetie. I'm not sure I'm up for a whole trip. Declan's voice chimed in from the background, his tone calm, soothing, too calm, like he had prepared this response in advance. Harold, it's just what you need. You've been taking care of everything. But now it's time for you to relax. We'll take care of everything for you. No stress. I felt a strange unease in my gut. Declan's words sounded so smooth, so practiced. Something about his over-eagerness to get me away from the house didn't sit right with me. I had known him for years now, and while he seemed charming on the surface, there were times when I caught him glancing at me with a look that was more businesslike than familial. Still, Rachel's excitement pulled me in. She sounded so happy, so intent on making me feel appreciated. Think about it, Dad, she urged, her voice softer now. A real vacation. You deserve it. It'll be good for you. It's just a week, and we'll make sure everything's taken care of while you're gone. I could feel the tug of war inside me. Part of me wanted to trust her, to believe that this was for my good. The other part, the part that had been feeling increasingly uneasy, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why the sudden urgency? Why the insistence on this particular trip at this particular time? But the more I hesitated, the more Rachel pushed. You've been through so much, Dad. I just want you to relax and enjoy yourself. Please. I couldn't argue with her. I couldn't bear to disappoint her. So I agreed. A few days later, I found myself at the airport, standing in front of the terminal with my suitcase in hand, unsure of what was happening. Rachel had insisted that I get there early, saying she and Declan would meet me for a quick coffee before my flight. They had been so insistent, almost too insistent, and for some reason, I felt an unease growing in my chest. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just overthinking things. Maybe it had been too long since I'd taken any time for myself. But as I stood there, waiting in the crowded terminal, a knot of uncertainty twisted in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I couldn't place it, but it felt like the calm before a storm. After checking in, I walked toward the coffee shop near the entrance, expecting to see Rachel and Declan. But when I arrived, they were nowhere to be found. I called Rachel's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Declan's, but the same thing happened. I waited for 10 minutes, 15. Still nothing. My heart began to race, and a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. What was going on? They had promised to be here. I tried to distract myself with the thought of the vacation, the time to relax, and escape the constant weight of the house, the memories, the silence. But every time I glanced at the departure board, my mind wandered back to the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. 30 minutes passed. An hour. I texted Rachel again. Where are you? No reply. Panic began to set in. What had happened? Had they forgotten about me? Had they left? Why wasn't she answering her phone? Why wasn't Declan? My eyes kept darting toward the gate, waiting for a sign of them. But the longer I waited, the more I realized they weren't coming. The truth hit me like a punch in the chest. They had left me here. I spent the next 2 hours wandering around the airport, feeling more and more foolish with each step. The confusion, the panic, it was all too much to bear. I called Rachel's phone again, and this time the call went through. Dad. Her voice sounded distant, almost preoccupied. We were just... Where are you? I interrupted, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. You were supposed to meet me at the airport. Why did you leave me here? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, finally, Rachel spoke, her voice laced with a coldness I had never heard before. I'm sorry, Dad, but it's for the best. You'll understand later. Just go home. We'll talk when you get back. I couldn't respond. The words caught in my throat, and for the first time in years, I was speechless. I stood in the middle of the crowded terminal, feeling completely alone. By the time I returned home that evening, the confusion still gnawed at me. What had happened? Why had they left me like that? The house felt different when I walked through the door. It was quieter, emptier. It wasn't just the physical absence of Rachel or Declan. It was the emptiness of something deeper, a betrayal I hadn't yet understood. It was then that I found the envelope, sitting on the kitchen counter, just like any other piece of mail. But this envelope was different. It was addressed to Mr. Harold Benton, property owner. I stared at the words, a sinking feeling growing in my chest. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. Inside was a deed for my house. But this wasn't a regular deed. It wasn't the deed I had signed months ago. This one is different. The names, the signatures, everything. None of it looked right. I flipped through the pages, and the realization hit me like a freight train. The deed was forged. They hadn't just left me at the airport. They had taken my house from me. The horror of it settled in slowly. I felt my legs go weak, and I sank to the floor, the weight of the betrayal crashing over me. Rachel, the daughter I had raised, the daughter I loved, had been a part of this. It wasn't just Declan. It was Rachel, too. She had known. She had to have known. I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned to see Tommy, my next-door neighbor, standing in the doorway. He must have seen the shock on my face, the confusion and anger in my eyes. "Harold," Tommy said quietly, his voice heavy with sympathy. "You don't have to go through this alone. I'll help you figure this out." I nodded numbly, feeling both relief and despair. The world had just shifted beneath my feet, and everything I thought I knew about my daughter and my life had crumbled. As I sat there, surrounded by the walls of my home, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let them get away with this. I would fight for what was mine, and I would start by finding out just how deep the betrayal went.